What's growing on, gardeners? It's Saturday, April 20th, and it is a scorcher of a day here on the southeastern coast of North Carolina. Do you have a very shady yard that you think doesn't have enough sun to grow a vegetable garden? Or do you live in a climate that gets so hot in the summer that it outright kills your vegetable garden? Well, this video is for you. Today, I'm going to show you how to grow a shade garden to tremendously increase your harvests and grow things that you thought couldn't grow in shade.
If you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the bell to receive new video notifications, and check out our Amazon store and Spreadshop links in the video description for everything I use in my garden and awesome custom designed apparel and other gear. Your support is greatly appreciated.
Tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, melons, squash, they all have two things in common. They are all incredibly popular to grow in the summer, and we have all been told that they need full sun to grow in. The first thing is true, but the second thing isn't, and it is responsible for so many of the problems that we have with these plants. We often consider these things to be vegetables, but we actually eat the fruits off of these plants, not the vegetation. And fruits require a lot of energy in order to produce flowers, set the fruit, and actually ripen the fruits for the harvest. So for that reason, when you buy these plants, or if you grow these plants, they are almost always tagged full sun. And the definition of full sun is a minimum 6 hours a day of uninterrupted sunshine. So for that reason, if you have a very shady yard, you often believe that you just don't have enough sunshine in order for these plants to produce. But the reality is, these plants do not grow in full sun in their native habitat. You're not going to find an open, sun-drenched field anywhere full of tomatoes and peppers and cucumbers growing naturally in the wild. These are not pioneer species. They are an understory or forest floor species. They grow as little weeds and meandering vines, either in dappled light or in part shade at best. They do not grow in full sun where they come from. Where these plants originate, they do not have to deal with frost or freeze. They can take their time to slowly grow and meander and set flowers and set fruit. The reason why it's advised that we grow these plants in full sun is because we have to jam an entire lifespan of these plants in usually a 6-month window, because we do get frost or freeze. That is why it's recommended we plant these in full sun. We need to push these plants as hard as possible and give them as much energy as possible to fruit in a very narrow window. And this culture of growing these understory and part shade species out in full sun is the reason why we often have so many problems with them. Sure, if you live in a really high latitude where it doesn't get that hot persistently and the sun doesn't get that strong, the plants wind up doing really well out in full sun. But if you live in the southeast, Florida, Texas, the desert, where the sun is really strong, these plants get absolutely smoked once spring turns to summer and the UV index gets really high and the heat starts building. They just can't take it because they did not evolve and adapt to a full sun environment. So if you live in a high latitude or you have a short growing season, say you live in New England or the Pacific Northwest, or you live in the upper Midwest, you will probably have to continue to grow these things out in full sun because your climate will just not be conducive and your growing season isn't long enough to grow them in part shade. But if you live in the South, if you live in Florida, Texas, the desert, and you have a long enough growing season, say 240 days or longer, the shade garden method is a great way to grow these plants because you have a long enough growing season to do, and your climate is probably too hot out in the open for these plants to thrive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up this raised garden bed in a very shady location, and this is going to be my secret hidden garden where I am going to grow additional things that out in my open garden will be smoked dead come July or August. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. But before I do that, I've showed you these raised garden beds that I've come into contact with in the past. They're really nice. They are a steel, very affordable. If you want, I'll place a link down in the video description to a video where I show you these garden beds, and I'll also place product links in the video description as well if you're interested in them. So what you see right here is the northwest wall of my house, and I have basically not planted much here because I've always been under the impression that it is too shady to grow anything but shade-tolerant things. But that's actually not true. It only gets about an hour's worth of sunlight in the winter, but now that we're in the spring, it's 3:30 and it is finally in full sun. So I will be able to get about 3.5 to 4 hours of direct sunlight here. The rest of the day it is in shade. And this is actually perfect for my tomatoes, peppers, and things that are likely to bolt. Because it's just too hot here in full sun come the summer. So I set up this little area right here where I'm going to place the raised beds. I don't normally put down a weed barrier, but I am in this location. Because it's been so neglected, it's a little bit weedy. So I'm going to set up a raised bed, and then I'm going to fill it with 50% composted cow manure and topsoil. So now that the raised bed is in place, we are going to fill it up with that 50-50 mix of composted cow manure and topsoil, and then get our hands in there and mix it together really well to make sure that everything is well blended and incorporated. Now the raised garden bed has been filled and everything has been mixed. It took 3 bags of topsoil and 3.5 bags of compost to fill this for a grand total of 6.5 cubic feet of mix. Now I will show you what I will be planting in here. I will be planting 2 tomato plants. On the left, it is a determinate variety called Celebrity, and on the right, it is a dwarf tomato project variety called Dwarf Emerald Giant. And then I have some pepper plants here that are called Melrose. I found these at a grocery store for $2.99 for an 8-pack. It was a steal, so I'm going to plant them. And I also have a plug of parsley that I grew from seed. Parsley tends to bolt out in the open here in the summertime because it's too hot. I think I will be able to grow it here underneath the shade all summer long, so this will be a little cheat to grow parsley where it would fail out in the open. Now my gut is telling me that because we are growing in a part shade environment, the best tomatoes to grow will be determinate and dwarf tomato style tomatoes, because they grow to a predetermined height and then they focus all of their energy on ripening their fruits after a certain point. So because of that, they are more energy efficient, and I think they will do better in this shady environment. However, because I'm an engineer and I love experimenting, I'm also growing a couple of indeterminate varieties on the sides as well. I have a Brandy Boy here, which is a beefsteak indeterminate, and I have a Marzanera plum style indeterminate right there. So we're going to see how they will do. Last year I grew an indeterminate beefsteak underneath my rain gutters and soffit, and it worked absolutely brilliantly, but it was in my backyard, which gets about 6 hours of sun in that location. So we're going to find out if this 3 to 4 hour sun environment is enough for these indeterminate, larger fruited tomatoes to thrive. Now we have all of our plants in place. I also decided to add a garden salsa hot pepper because I had an extra, and this is a really nice productive plant that can grow tons of peppers in a very small space. Now they've all been set in their planting holes, and I am going to fertilize them with a combination of a 555 organic fertilizer with bone meal and some lobster and crab shell meal. I'll make sure to place direct links to all of these things down in the video description for your convenience if you want to pick some of it up. But I blended everything together, and they're going to get about 2 tablespoons each per plant, and that will get them off to a perfect start. And then we are going to water them in with my favorite fertilizer, Alaska Fish Fertilizer. This is about 3 to 4 tablespoons diluted into a 2-gallon watering can. This will get them all off to an amazing start and help mitigate transplant shock. And the last step of the process is to mulch the area and the garden beds itself in an effort to suppress weeds and evenly regulate soil moisture. Now, I chose to use old wheat straw that I used last fall in order to insulate and overwinter my bananas. It is one of my favorite types of mulch, but any kind of natural mulch will do just fine. Just don't use something like dyed mulch, rubber mulch, or stone mulch. I'm telling you, I have extremely high hopes for this part shade garden right here. Last year, I grew a big beef hybrid tomato underneath my rain gutter and soffit, and the production was not only absolutely incredible, but it outlived the tomatoes out in my open garden by 2 entire months. And while I couldn't ask the tomato plant exactly why it happened, I hypothesize it's because the overhead cover provided protection from the rain and also left it in part shade, so it didn't get nearly as much of the high heat stress that the plants out in the open, unprotected areas of my garden got. Now, if you have ever grown tomatoes, melons, cucumbers, squash, peppers before, you know that those plants absolutely hate getting wet. It causes fungal diseases, bacterial infections, pest infestations. It is a mess. So growing them underneath a rain gutter or overhang or soffit and providing protection from the wetness and the rain, it really makes an enormous difference. And I just know that these plants are going to flourish and excel. So if you think that you can't grow these things in part shade and you need at least 6 hours of uninterrupted sunlight each day, I'm telling you that is not the case, particularly if your growing season is long enough. This is a total game changer, especially if your plants suffer from fungal diseases and heat stress. Not to mention, the whole setup just looks beautiful. It has such a lovely looking, attractive curb appeal, and I am making more efficient use of space that I otherwise wasn't going to use to grow food. And I'm telling you, I'm going to get a fair amount of food out of here. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and please ring that notification bell so you're notified when I release more videos like these. If you're curious about any of the products that I used in this video, like the fertilizers or the raised beds, I will place direct links to them all down in the video description. And while you're there, I'll also place an Amazon storefront link to my Amazon store, which includes everything I use in real life in my garden. While you're down there, you could also check out my spread shop link for custom merch if you want to support the channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video. Okay, I just got back from the gym, and just to prove a point that Dale can tell time, he knows that we always go for a walk when I get back from the gym. So I bet you he comes running downstairs really excited because he knows it's walk time and that he's going to run right to the laundry room. You are the most predictable person on earth. You know that, buddy? What? What do you want? Are you serious? Oh, he hit his walk button. Oh, I just want to prove a point that Dale can tell time. Let's see what time it is, buddy. Oh, it's 7:30 at night. It must be time for our evening walk. You want to go for a walk, Dale? All right, I just wanted to make that point for y'all.